9 disastrous gigs that music legends would rather their fans forget. Being in a band or operating as a solo artist might be up there with the best things possible in life. Think of the fame, the adulation, the money, the plentiful opportunities for excess. But while most of us would do anything to be in the shoes of these bands and musicians, it isn't always as rosy as it seems. Performing, for instance, can sometimes be a nightmare. So while the following artists may have achieved legendary status for their many fans, on these occasions, everything that could have possibly gone wrong for them playing live did. Number 9. Amy Winehouse, Kalemegdan Park, Belgrade, Serbia, June 18th, 2011. British singer Amy Winehouse brought jazz and soul back into the mainstream in the mid-2000s with her hit album Back to Black and songs such as Rehab and Valerie. But the troubled Londoner would struggle with addiction during her short life. This would often affect her live shows, which were inconsistent, to put it mildly. But perhaps none would be as infamous as her performance in Belgrade, Serbia. The gig in the Serbian capital on June 18, 2011 would sadly turn out to be the British soul singer's last. On the day, a clearly inebriated Winehouse cut a sorry and dejected figure, unable to hold a note, let alone sing any of her songs competently. In fact, she didn't even seem to know where she was, hailing the Athens and then later New York audience. Jeered off by the fuming crowd, Winehouse died a month later. Number 8. Nickelback, Ilha do Hermel Festival, Portugal, August 19th, 2002. Nickelback, probably the most critically reviled rock band of all time. Often placed up there with the likes of Limp Bizkit and Creed in a who sucks the most battle. But the Chad Kroeger-fronted band's plotting, post-grunge sound seemed to appeal to a very large number of people around the world, judging by their often impressive album sales and lucrative tours anyway. But they're not so popular with Portuguese rock fans. That's if Nickelback's performance at the Ilha do Hermel Festival in August 2002 was anything to go by. Just 2 songs into their set in the Iberian nation, the band quit after being mercilessly showered with rocks. The onslaught led to a shocked Kroger to ask, "Do you want to see some rock and roll or do you want to go home?" Home please, Chad. Number 7. Pearl Jam, Roskilde Festival, Denmark, June 30th, 2000. Pearl Jam became the most popular of Seattle's so-called Big Four. But while the band were widely marketed as grunge, they were in reality more indebted to mainstream rock, particularly The Who and U2. Indeed, in their earnest singer Eddie Vedder, PJ have a frontman with a heart as big as a lion and a penchant for bold, Bono-style gestures, as this solemnity was on display after a disastrous concert for the group. On June 30th, 2000, Pearl Jam would play at the Roskilde Festival in Denmark, and their performance, which was not memorably bad itself, would be marred with tragedy. Sadly, after the crowd surged forward, 8 young men lost their lives because of suffocation, right in front of the band. A 9th passed away in the hospital after another 5 days. It remained one of the worst concert tragedies in history and scarred the Seattle-based group who contemplated quitting. Number 6. Nirvana, Buenos Aires, Argentina, October 30th, 1992. Nirvana should need little introduction, even to the most casual of rock fans. The iconic grunge band who single-handedly pushed the punk underground into the mainstream with their sophomore record, Nevermind, ended abruptly upon the death of their chief creative force, singer and guitarist Kurt Cobain, in April 1994. But before that tragedy, they'd gained a lot of respect for their energetic live shows. However, a gig in the Argentine capital in October 1992 really upset Nirvana. The first problem was that the sound was out, but there was a worse concern. Cobain later recalled that there had been a hostile and sexist audience. They literally made the band's all-girl support act storm off in tears. So, staunch feminist Kurt and his 2 cohorts got their own back, refusing to play hits but constantly teasing Smells Like Teen Spirit, playing obscurities and generally being antagonistic. Awesome. Number 5. The Beatles. Subscription Rooms, Stroud, March 31st, 1962. The Beatles are the most famous and most widely loved rock band of all time. But John, Paul, and George didn't have legions of screaming fans from the get-go. On the contrary, when they were just starting out in the pre-Ringo era with Pete Best behind the drum kit, there was very little enthusiasm indeed. It's hard to believe now, given how popular the Fab Four became and the way in which they changed music forever, but it's true. At an early gig at the Subscription Rooms in Stroud, Gloucestershire in the UK, in March 1962, has been cited as the Beatles' worst gig. Their first show outside Liverpool, Paul McCartney later remembered, "Stroud was pretty bad. We'd never heard of it, but we went there and I think about 3 people showed up." He continued, "Some of them were Teds and started throwing money at us, throwing pennies at us, but we just picked it up and thought, that'll do it." Number 4. Frank Zappa, Rainbow Theatre, London. Frank Zappa was one of the most prolific and innovative artists in popular music. The self-taught multi-instrumentalist was noted for his technical expertise and was also an acclaimed live performer. But one particular show that the Mothers of Invention and solo star played at London's Rainbow Theatre would go down in infamy. That gig on December 10th, 1971 would leave Zappa in a wheelchair for close to a year. After playing a mocking version of I Want to Hold Your Hand, an angry fan named Trevor Charles Howell clambered onto stage and pushed Zappa off of it. The shocked Americans fell several feet into the orchestra pit. In truth, it could have been worse. As Zappa remembered in his 1989 autobiography, "The band thought I was dead." Fortunately, he would make a slow but substantial recovery. Number 3. Pink Floyd, Earl's Court, London. Pink Floyd pioneered space rock and helped move popular music into realms that were previously unexplored. However, the English band inspired almost as much ire as they did awe, with their complex work often lauded or angrily lambasted as pretentious. Nonetheless, the group became famous for their extravagant live performances. But one of those shows on what would be their final tour ended in disaster. During the first London show of the Division Bell Tour, a 14-night stand at the city's historic Earl's Court venue, a terrible accident occurred. The band had just kicked off proceedings with Shine On You Crazy Diamond when scaffolding that was holding up a stand full of people suddenly collapsed. Of those, 96 fans were injured, with numerous punters tumbling at least 20 feet in the accident. Fortunately, no one lost their life, and the gig was rearranged. Number 2. Curtis Mayfield, Wingate Field, New York, August 13th, 1990. Curtis Mayfield was one of the 20th century's most celebrated soul singers. From his influential work with the Impressions to his later solo career, he continually released music from the 1960s through the 1990s. Mayfield was an expert guitarist and live performer too, but one particular show of his would end in complete disaster. On the warm summer evening of August 13th, 1990, Mayfield was playing an outdoor concert at Wingate Field in New York. All seemed to be going really well, until suddenly a lighting rig above the stage dropped on top of him. The soul legend was instantly electrocuted by the falling lighting. Tragically, he suffered paralysis beneath the neck and obviously could not play anymore. He recorded vocals for a final LP before his death in 1999. Number 1. Metallica and Guns N' Roses, Olympic Stadium, Montreal, Canada, August 8, 1992. It's 1992. Metallica are the world's most popular heavy metal band, having released their phenomenally successful, self-titled Black Album in 1991. Guns N' Roses, though reviled by much of the contemporary underground, are probably the biggest rock and roll act. The bands decide to go on tour together. Two of the biggest names in rock on the same bill. What could go wrong? Well, quite a lot, as it happens. First, during a show at Montreal's Olympic Stadium on August 8, 1992, Pyrotechnics scalded guitarist and singer James Hetfield as Metallica performed. The frontman was badly burned on his arms and across his body, and the metal giants had to leave. Guns N' Roses arrived on the stage after a lengthy delay, but sound issues and Axl Rose's reported sore throat meant that they too would leave early, prompting rioting from an angry audience, inside and then in the streets of Montreal. Oh dear.